Okay, welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Council. I ngā rangatira tēnā koutou, I hui anei I tēnei rā, no reira, kia ora mai tātou katoa. I'll just open with a karakia. I te atua, homai kia mātou, tau maramatanga, ko tau ranga Māori, tau kaha ni tau araha, no tēnei rā. Amen. So, yes, I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting, extraordinary meeting of the Council. I'd like to acknowledge and welcome Invercargill Mayor Tom Campbell and Deputy Grant Dermody, who's the Chair of the Local Democracy and Advancement Working Party, and obviously the CE, Michael Day, CE, who are with us in person today, and we have Evelyn Cook, Chair of Te Amara, being online. So welcome, Evelyn, too. Right, we'll move through the agenda. We do have a couple of items, one pretty minor, but one pretty major. So in regards, I don't have any apologies as such, but I don't know where Lyndall is. I haven't heard anything, she should be involved in these things. So. But I haven't received any apologies, so we won't take it as apologies. She may be just running late too. Don't know of any declarations of interest, public forum petitions and deputations. We don't have any at the moment. So number 5, extraordinary notice of extraordinary items or urgent business. We don't have any. So no questions that I know of. So we'll just move straight into the reports. Item 7, and in regards to 7.1, appointment to the Southland Community Broadcasters Trust. We can move into that. Do you want to run through that with
very quickly through the chair? This is a very procedural matter around the appointment of our representative to the Southland Community Broadcasting Trust. With the resignation of Sam Rostetter-Stead, we need to revoke his appointment and then appoint a staff member as the council representative, and the recommendations are set out in the paper, but essentially you are giving me permission to figure out who our representative will be. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Obviously those 4 recommendations in regards to that. But effectively, we're going to be allowing the Chief Executive to appoint one of the council staff in due course. Are there any questions in regards to that? You're happy to move that? Jeff, second it. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move on to 7.2. In regards to this, obviously this is a reasonably important item, but I'd like to ask the council to agree to a procedural resolution to set aside standing orders to the extent needed to allow our invited guests to participate in this item. And that standing order resolution, the council set aside standing orders specifically, standing orders 14.6 relating to members' right to speak, and standing orders 21, section relating to general rules of debate. And for this item to allow the invited guests from Invercargill City Council and Ngāi Tahu ki Merahiku to address the council and to participate in discussion at the discretion of the chair. I'm prepared to move that in regards to that. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Yeah, happy to second that, David. Is there any discussion? Everybody comfortable with that? That's all good. I'll put that to vote. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. So invite Mayor Tom, Mayor Campbell and Grant. And Michael, if you wanted to step and sit, feel free. That's the for a discussion if there's anything you can answer in regards to this. And Evelyn, obviously, make sure I've got you on my screen. So Evelyn, if you do have, we'll allow you to speak as well. Due course. So just just to get things, just before we the representative to speak, I want to briefly set out the context. Over the recent months, Environment Southland has focused on making a constructive contribution to the Southland reforms discussions, particularly by helping build understanding of the regional and catchment-based work we do. That was one of the reasons we hosted the Southland Local Government Summit earlier this month, I should say, bringing together elected members and senior leaders from the region. It was useful to see some of that discussion reflected at last week's Invercargill City Council meeting and at other meetings I've been attending. There was a strong focus at the ICC meeting on integrated catchment management and managing catchments from the mountains to the sea. We've also tried to support the conversation with evidence and analysis, including financial modelling released earlier this month. That modelling does not recommend a preferred structure, and it should not be read as promising immediate savings. It does, however, indicate that keeping regional functions together is likely to be more efficient than splitting them across multiple organisations, while also showing that reform will not remove the need for ongoing infrastructure investment. One important point is that regional councils cannot submit a Head Start proposal themselves. What we can do is to contribute our expertise, evidence, perspective to help inform any proposal that is developed. Our focus is on making sure Southland's communities and environment continue to be well served, whatever local government arrangements may look in the future. Mana whenua are in a similar position. I want to acknowledge the importance of the Charter of Understanding between local councils and Ngāi Tahu ki Murihiku and their long-standing relationships. These are not arrangements that have appeared overnight. They reflect years of commitment by councils and mana whenua to build agreed ways of working, trust and shared understanding. Any future structure must uphold and strengthen these relationships, not weaken them. It must also ensure iwi have genuine and meaningful opportunities to participate in decisions that affect their interest, responsibilities and aspirations for Murihiku. So with that was just to set out a few where we stand in regards to this. I'll just ask, look, Tom, Tom, I'll put him here as well. Should get the titles right. Yeah, Tom, just if you want to say a few words, and Grant, and then we'll ask Evelyn after that. That's okay. Just an order of things.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. I do have a little speech I want to give, and then we can take questions, and I'll direct all the hard ones to Grant.
Just need to get a hanky. I'm not disrespecting
Which is the chair of the Mayor's Prerogative, isn't it? You let me wait for you to You keep a much warmer room than we do. Because we're trying to save money in electricity, so keep the place at 16 degrees Celsius. No offense, I need chat. Thank you. Okay, well, look, thanks very much, everybody. So last week, Invercargill City Council resolved to develop a Head Start proposal to government based on a single unitary authority for Southland, which we have called One Southland. A One Southland Unitary Council would combine the functions of Invercargill, Gore, Southland District and Environment Southland into a single council. Our council unanimously chose the One Southland model for reasons which we believe to be self-evident. Firstly, it provides regional cohesion, not just geographic, but as a mutually dependent community of Southland. We totally reject the notion that we are two different peoples. Secondly, it provides a single powerful voice for Southland when negotiating with central government. Thirdly, it will allow growth and investment in the region to be planned and managed cohesively. Fourthly, it provides for catchment integrity from the mountains to the sea. Fifthly, it will allow a whole of region approach to river management and flood protection to increase the resilience of the community of Southland. And lastly, it is the most financially efficient model. No matter how you cut it, doing things once rather than 4 times or 2 times is always going to be the most economic. Well, the benefits of a One Southland model are obvious. The equally obvious risk is that rural communities or towns far from Invercargill may feel that they have lost their voice and are dominated by the city. For that reason, a joint working party was established in June by the existing 4 councils to focus on that issue. That team was known as the Enhancing Local Democracy Working Party and has made recommendations which have now been formally approved by Invercargill City and which will be explicitly included in the Head Start proposal to government. Those recommendations are: 1, the award system be adopted; 2, that there be an equal number of rural-based and urban-based ward seats on council; 3, the wards should be aligned with catchments of the 4 main Southland rivers; 4, that there should be 12 to 16 elected council members based on further work at the next stage of Head Start. Critical questions are whether Stewart Island and Bluff should be separate, for example, and whether there would be a Maori ward, so somewhere between 12 and 16 council members. 5thly, that local communities should be represented by local boards. As you know, these are defined in statute and have more authority than community boards, having their own annual plans and budgets. And finally, the guiding principles for local boards will be the decisions that should be made at a community level, or will be made at community level where possible, and at regional level only where that is essential. Separately, the future relationship with Mana Whenua has been discussed in a series of meetings with Ranaka and Tront, which will then be defined in the Head Start proposal. Those discussions are making good progress. It is expected by both parties that this will be based on the Charter of Understanding which had existed between the councils in Naitahu for many years, very successfully. The Head Start proposal is being written with input from stakeholders, including Environment Southland, and will be finalised before the 6th of August. And on that date, will go to our council for final ratification before it is lodged with government. Key to whether ICC approves submitting the Head Start will be the degree of support which it has from the community and from other territorial authorities, Environment Southland, Mana Whenua, and other stakeholders. Well, the original rules from DIA were that at least 2 territorial authorities must agree. Ministers have subsequently said that non-conforming proposals will be considered where there is explicit support from other stakeholders in the region. We believe that support from Environment Southland is a prerequisite. It is in that context that the ICC is asking whether Environment Southland would provide support for a One Southland Head Start application. Whatever happens, ICC will continue to support the work of the Local Government Commission to its conclusion. But we believe that given our strong conviction that the One Southland model is the best for our region, that we should have the courage of our convictions and put a stake in the ground by entering that model into the Head Start process. If it is accepted by government, we will then have 2 clear years to work together collectively to design the new One Southland model in detail before elections in 2028. We will be the masters of our own destiny and with sufficient lead time to implement it well. If we wait for backstop, which we may well be subject to irrespective of the LGC process, we face 2 years at least of uncertainty and will be the subject of whatever central government decides in its wisdom, including potential for commissioners calling the shots for us after 2028. ICC greatly appreciate the guidance and design of the One Southland model, which ES has provided us, and the help of your staff in drafting the Head Start document. We invite you now to take that extra step with us as partners by explicitly supporting it being put to government. Thank you.
Thanks. So we appreciate that we were able to speak at your meeting last week too, you and I. But, Grant, do you want to add some more context?
Yeah, probably just to give a bit more context to the working group that we work with, which the team was a part of. We had 2 councillors from Galway and 2 from Southland District. And, you know, as Tom has alluded to, the real purpose for that was giving, we're trying to find a way which decisions, where necessary, can be made at a local level and in a structure that can't be removed by our council. And so the construct of a community board means that a new council will come in and change those community groups or boards and structure, or just remove them, whereas local boards are legislatively put in place and cannot be changed easily. And I think that's a real core tenet to what our community is wanting in all areas, is they want the ability to decide their own destiny. And we've heard that loud and clear in the recommendations that we've put through to our council, and it's available equally to your council and anyone else who's interested, are there very clearly to see that that's a core tenet of how we come together and move forward in any shape or form in terms of local government change. So that's probably the key piece I'd like to say.
Thanks for that. Evelyn, do you want to make some comments? Open comment. Look, we can't hear you, Evelyn. You're just on mute, Evelyn, so. No, you're off there now. Try that. No, we still haven't got. We still can't quite hear you. Can someone? We're looking for someone from the tech world. You are off mute, but we can't hear you. Sorry, Evelyn. So we're just trying to. We're getting someone maybe to can help. Is there a volume? Could be enough volume.
Sorry. Just check if the other councillors, any of them can talk. Ask one of them.
Yeah, Paul, can you hear me? And can you talk, please? Can you talk just to show that?
Yeah, I can hear you if you can hear me.
So it might be at your end, Evelyn. It might be on the computer, whether the volume's, I don't know, mic volume or. Sorry. Okay. No, we can't hear you yet. And someone's
coming.
Someone's coming. People in the call and see if I get to take your end. So we might carry on, Evelyn, but we'll get someone to hopefully get someone to give you a hand. Certainly want your input. So we'll carry on in regard to that. So at this stage, yeah, well, thanks for those comments. Do you want to just give a quick rundown of the, is that right, or do you want me, or? Obviously, we've got some, there's a few recommendations there. In regards to anybody, I suppose if I open it up, we're here today because times, it's very little time in regards to the Head Start, and we need to decide whether we have got a position in regards to how we support either a Head Start or not. This is about today. We know where the ICC stand at this stage. They've agreed to develop a head start. And I suppose it's where the point is, we've obviously got some really good priorities. We've got a good list of what are non-negotiables for us as a regional council for our functions. And we're trying to embed that into the new structure, whatever that structure is in the future, involved in whatever process that is going to come. So does anybody want to make any comments in regards to Phil, and then Mark, Jeff?
Thank you. I was just wondering if I might ask a couple of questions, because we're in a sort of a supporting role rather than a leading role on this one. And I just want to first of all thank ICC for taking the move of developing a draft proposal, because I think it would be incredibly helpful, and whatever the outcome is in the next 12 days, that won't be wasted effort, because there is other things that would be activated where that will be valuable to our efforts. And also thank you for investing in the working party to explore what that might look like. Probably two, possibly three questions I have is, the first question might be a simple one. Do you envisage that your draft proposal would be available for the Broad District Council to consider when they, I understand, have a meeting on Tuesday the 4th of August to consider the same topic that we're thinking through? And the reason I ask that is that if it was available, I'm sure they might find that quite a useful document to consider.
I'm not sure it'll be available in final form, but I'm sure there'll be a draft, Nick, or will we?
Through Sub-Chair, the draft will be ready at that time. We're targeting to have it available on that exact day. Whether we'll be able to release it to Gore, I'll need to look to my elected officials, but we would be hoping to get it up in a public situation on that day anyway, because we need to have it up 48 hours before. So whether you'll be able to use that on that day, well, it'll be public. So in short, the target will be yes.
Right. So we'll get something. Just one, can I pick you up one point, Councillor Morrison? As far as, I used the word partner. As far as I'm concerned, Environment Southland is an equal partner if we take this forward. I know the government have said that they recognise the TA signature but don't recognise Environment Southland. They've come back from that a bit since then. The reality is that if we put this in, then we will see you as a full partner, and going forward, you would be in terms of designing the thing beyond. Because this is it's a very high level document, and to get into the next level is going to require a huge amount of work. And the reality is that much of the expertise for that resides in Environment Southland, actually. So we would hope for the ongoing support, but also we would see as part. Sorry, save you 3 questions.
Yeah. And I'll probably acknowledge that at your council meeting last week, there was unanimous support that single unitary authority was the best model, and straw polls taken at this table indicate the same level of unanimous support for that. Should the backstop process be triggered, what is the ICC understanding of what that backstop process is going to involve? We have had really limited information on the backstop process, and it results in an information asymmetry around, here's one choice, here's an alternate, but we don't know what that alternate's like involved. I was wondering what discussions have you had, or what insights might you have at a council?
Really, I'll ask Michael to comment, he might have more information, but the government have, I don't think it's a matter of playing it close to the chest. I think they just have not yet decided what that's going to look like. I think they don't know, and therefore we don't know what the backstop will look like. I got to say that I fear the worst. It's not just so much fearing the worst of what the backstop will look like. It's a process between here and now that worries me. 3 years of uncertainty. When the backstop comes in, what happens between 2028 and 2031 with respect to Environment Southland in particular? Is it going to be commissioners? Is it going to be that terrible trio of TA mayors who are going to, run it in some, in their spare time? I don't know, but honestly, don't think they know either. Did you get any comment?
Yes, through Sub-Chair. To the point in relation to has government come out and given an official position, no. From from the understanding amongst the TAs, this is one area that we're actually united in relation to our position and our understanding, which is that from a backstop process, the suggestion is that it will follow what was presented initially in relation to the CTBs, which is that either the mayor's sitting on a unitary board controlling the unitary functions, or whether that would be a commission function. That's what's being floated as the backstop component, but there is no legislation in place in relation to it, and that is just what is being put forward as the likely outcome from the ministry bodies that have been informing us from the territorial authorities.
And with a sense that would kick in from the 28th election period on.
So the intention is that there would be no election for Environment Southland in 2028, so something's got to take its place. I must admit that, I mean, I've heard a little bit separately that it might be commissioners, and in fact, what I did hear was that if it was commissioners, they would have a very significant role in determining what the backstop would look like. So, you know, they're kind of in two ways. They're very undesirable in my view. You know, they take over the, if it is them, they would take over the running of Environment Southland, but also they would have a major view of what the backstop would look like. I don't know whether that's worse than the three mayors doing it. I think it's probably a draw.
Then Morris.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Campbell and Councillor Dermody, for your information there before. Just for the record, last Thursday night I attended a meeting in Gore run by Federated Farmers over there. Our Chairman Jeremy and Councillor Rose here were both in attendance. I think that was the only ones from Environment Southland there.
Excuse me. Yeah, Elster was there.
My apologies there. Councillor Gibson. But look, the feeling of the meeting there, I think it intensified during the evening towards the two unitaries, because there's a real fear amongst a lot of the rural population that they're going to be the poor Southland in one unitary and not going to have the voice that they expect or command. So I think it's really valuable that you people can make that draft available to the rural district and try and alleviate some of the negative comments and fear of those rural people over there. Particularly speaking with Grant before the meeting, the way he explained how local boards would work and their set in legislation so that they can't be changed. As long as we've got equal boards for both the rural and urban, I think we'll get a real consensus of following the one unitary.
Okay, so I think one of the issues that I have had is that the protocol is that a mayor does not go into another area and call a meeting. I mean, you can go if you're invited, but you can't. I could not call a meeting and go, right?
I realise.
So the ability actually to, you know, front up to say groups like that and be able to explain your position does not exist. I think though that if we did put in a head start, and I think if it was approved, then I think we would absolutely have to find ways of doing that. Yeah, I'm going to talk on Hoppinoo Radio tomorrow on Thursday soon, right? So I've been trying to get out there, but I cannot call a meeting in Lumsden. I cannot call a meeting in January. Although I'd like to, if I could, because I think a lot of the concern is based on fear of the unknown, and you know, not really quite understanding, you know, what's proposed. So people tend to go for safety first, which two looks safer than one from their point of view.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Now, I've read through the recommendations here. There's nearly a page and a half of them. I assume that you guys have seen that as well.
I haven't seen the recommendations. I've probably been sent them, but I haven't read them, to be honest.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it seems to me to be very comprehensive, but I think it'll be important for. Is that Jeremy? Do you think that that's necessary at this stage for the Invercargill City to?
Oh, yeah, they've just been given it to me. I know I was sent, but to be honest,
So you have had the opportunity to look.
Yeah.
I think it's important that if there's anything in there that makes you a bit uncomfortable, then we need to think about it.
If I can add to that, Morris, obviously the problem is about our priorities, which we've outlined very clearly to the ICC meeting. And the other ones are just around, a lot of them are certainly I don't believe what I'm hearing from ICC and the meeting involved. Nothing there that would be stuck out that would should I say, cause any problems in regards to that. But we can certainly should be able to get a agenda.
Is that something that you people would like to look at a bit more
Do you
closely?
want to have a quick look at it? Like Rachel's got one behind there, so you've got them there.
so we have, sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Although I haven't seen these resolutions, I have seen them separately because a lot of it was included in the letter which Jeremy sent to us last week, I think. So, for example, number 3,
All those we went.
that was the basis of the presentation that the chair
Absolutely.
gave us last week, and we're certainly aligned with those, and we built some of those into the head start. I don't see anything else that, I've read them as we were talking. I don't see anything else. And any specific one, Councillor Rodway, that you want me to comment on?
No, not really. I just
We'll go through it. Like, whether you wanted us quickly. The 3's about the principles, which we spoke. We sent you a copy of that. What presented to you, and probably the other one is probably 6. 6A through to F, just in regards to protecting integrated catchment management, regional environment stewardship, maintaining strength and local voice, which you clearly indicated that, uphold the Nations existing charter arrangements, which during partnership with NITO, preserve the strength and specialist regional capability, provide clear accountability of decision-making, funding, and identify matters that require further detailed design if the outline proposal is accepted by government. They're pretty straight. Nothing there that I take it.
So through your chair, we would certainly support those. The only one that I would comment on is the preserve and strengthen specialist regional capabilities in science and so forth, where clearly we have talked to Trump about the idea of Tokyo Centre of Excellence. We consider that might well be a very good idea because we've got such a limited number of, let's say, the high-tech specialists around the country, that the ability to locate them in actually can be virtual. We don't need to be in the same place in the country, but people who are functional leaders, not line of management leaders, but functional leaders in the speciality we find that to be a really interesting proposal from Trump, which we not formally support it, but we do actually support it. So that's the only comment I'd make about that number D. It might be the very specialist capability where they're very limited supply, water specialists and geologists, mapping specialists. It might be that it's better to concentrate them, in one location and tap into that as a shared service.
Maybe quickly through the chair. The intention of A through to F there is that those things are best represented in whatever the proposal ends up being, whether it's a head start or whether or not it's something that is broader than that. So that's the idea, is that those things happen because they will be needed.
Do you have a question in regards to that?
I have another question. No, well, that sounds pretty good. There's a bit of flexibility there to do the final head start proposal. So I'm happy with that. I wanted to go. I thought originally the government said that you had to have 2 councils playing on the test. So what is the likelihood of one council supported by ES being accepted by the government? Do you have a feeling for that?
Yeah, look, I don't have a feeling for how it will be received, but certainly ministers have encouraged us to put one in. I mean, we are disenfranchised, aren't we? Because you guys don't get a vote. And if we don't, if anybody else wanted, any of the other TAs want to, support One Southland, then we don't vote either. We're actually both disenfranchised by the way that the system's been designed, which is ridiculous because we're the majority population, size the majority population in Southland. So, the response that we've had from ministers when we've raised that is, put one in anyway and see where it goes. It would be a non-conforming bid. But my understanding is it will not be the only one around the country because there's a few cities sitting in this situation.
Okay.
Certainly, in regards to this, regional councils can offer support.
Yeah.
I mean, I've clearly indicated that we don't have a vote, but we can certainly indicate what we think, which is certainly a large step from where we first got talked about. So, anybody else? Roger.
Thanks, Chair. There are a couple of things I wanted to comment on. One was just to add the harbour masters function, which I'm sure you have some consciousness of, but no doubt you can also envisage the additional cost if it was to be duplicated across, the Fiordland region and the southern parts of the region. So that's an important consideration there. And then I have a question for you. Interested to understand where ICC's thinking around funding models has progressed to, if it's mature enough to talk about at the moment, conscious that there's been a lot of scrutiny on council rates. We've seen discussions around the rates capping proposals. This council has progressed a rates rise significantly lower than had previously been proposed, but irrespective, there's a large capital investment ahead of all councils in Southland, and that's something that we leave for future generations to carry as well. So I'm interested in ICC's thinking.
You're asking about the rating model, basically, how you're thinking about that. And I think, sorry for you, Chair, it would be improper, actually, for ICC to design that. I mean, if we get through, that will be almost the first piece of work for that new council will be to decide how rates are going to be divided. Questions like where does debt sit? Does debt get, taken collectively under, a single entity, or does it sit where it falls? Do we have local area targeted rates in the same way the SDC do, or does everything get smeared across the? I mean, these are the sorts of questions which have to be determined by that new council rather than by the city. So Michael was one comment.
If I could, sorry, my question wasn't so specifically about the rating. Quite, it was more about whether you saw a place in the proposal for alternative revenue streams to be addressed.
Through Chair, I'll try and tackle that because that is one of the topics that you do need to cover off in relation to the proposal. There's absolutely going to need to be further work done, and when I say that, the rest of my week's going to be focused in relation to how do we support and feed in that piece of information. I was previously a CFO in relation to the City Council, so it is my background as well in relation to the rating components. What I will highlight is one of the key things in relation to the rating aspect, and I'll come to the other side. Now, the rating aspect is being very clear and simple in our approach going forward in relation to overall from a regional perspective. And that's a challenge with some of the nuances that are within all the councils and trying to uncouple that, but also not take away their individuality in the different areas. In relation to the other revenue streams, we're very open not only to looking at what we currently have in relation to access to commercial activities, etc., and creating other revenue streams across the board in relation to a regional perspective, but also starting to look further afield in relation to what can we push back to central government and indicate to them about funding streams and opening some of the channels back up. It's not so much about looking for them to create new revenue streams because that will be met with a strong resistance, but looking into what they've got available now and also then looking to new industries and how we can actually work to attract both those revenue streams, both central and local.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just grab, I see Alistair's online. behind me. Alistair, do you want to, and then I'll go to you and then John.
I guess, yeah, thank you, Chair. We've discussed GDC. The other thing that I have trouble with, I've been only to 3 meetings, and also kept myself away from this a wee bit and concentrated on business as usual. Where is STC? I've never seen them at any meeting. Is there any chance of them coming on board?
So through you, Chair, I mean, look at this. I can't speak for STC, but they seem to be very well to the 2 Southland model, and have, I mean, we have written to them, inviting them to participate in discussions about 1 Southland. They have not responded. I mean, they are wedded to the 2 Southland model. So I think that the chance that they would come on board would be low, vanishingly low in reality. They just have a different view.
Okay, thank you.
You have a question, I think.
Nice. Who else there? Eric, we'll take you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much. For whatever reason, where I am, I'm hogging power, so I'm going to disappear quite shortly. So I would just like to express a couple of points. One, I don't see any point in dividing Southland. My experience over some time of representing the interests of Southland is a clear understanding that we're codependent, and I think we need the strongest possible voice. So I'm supportive of just one voice for Southland, that is 1 council. I think what is probably more important that has been missed out to date is the demarcation of how the various roles will be merged into any kind of new arrangement. And we need to probably record something about having the protection for the environment clearly demarcated as to how that will manage in a unitary council. But I am supportive of just 1 voice for Southland.
Thank you, Eric.
Leadership's not always a very comfortable place to be, is it? Especially in the context that we were operating. I think it was Ray from Bluff the other day highlighted just how, and he's, you know, obviously he's a board, community board chair, how he had no understanding of the local board structure and how that might, or how that would be beneficial to our community going forward. And I think that's, when I talk about leadership, I think understanding the challenge of actually making a decision that doesn't, without taking people with us at this point in time, but understanding that there's a lot of work to do behind in the next process to actually get people to understand the value. I think we've actually just got to make a decision. We've got to move forward.
John?
Yeah, I guess just looking at this, you know, there is an obvious solution here, but quite often with local and national politics, emotion can never override what the obvious answer is. And I guess my question is, if we end up, you know, because this is a flip of the coin bid, literally it could be a split in Southland. You know, technically there could be 2 bids going potentially, I believe. If the T-entry does go ahead, obviously ICC's role don't change too much. Ours do. You're obviously here because you understand, it seemed to have a reasonably good understanding. We've probably been a bit late to explain, you know, this whole thing's reared its head as far as people actually didn't know what Environment Southland did. So we had to work pretty hard to pitch what we do and our responsibilities. The concern is, for me, is if we go to 2 unitary, then there's obviously a view of the 2 unitary how our operations would happen. We're sitting here saying we don't know how that could happen. So I guess my question to you is, would we still have support in how we deliver the regional services if this bid fails and we get pushed to a 2 unitary? Because we're not going to be here to make sure, to Eric's point, that the environment comes first in many cases. So I guess it's more of a question of if this doesn't quite go to plan, where to?
I don't know. Sorry for you, Chair. I mean, clearly, it would be split. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's another model where you set up a CCO and you put the regional authority in there and each year's, I mean, there is a model for that. But that only applies really to those things that are transactional. You can put in a CCO. Those things that are about planning and about consenting and about all that stuff has got to sit underneath, the governance group. It's got to sit underneath a council. So I think inevitably it would be split. And even if the CCO was set up to do the transactional stuff, even to do the science stuff, it would still leave the stuff that we are concerned most about would still sit in one body or another and be split between them. And we don't know. So the biggest concern that we've got actually, so we thought seriously about the two model. To some extent, the city's the least affected by it. But we were really concerned about the Areti. So, we take our drinking water from the Areti. The flooding is controlled by the Areti and the Macarave and the rivers that run into it, streams that run into it. The health of the estuary is determined by what comes down from the Areti. And then you say, well, how much, at the moment we've got no control other than the last few hundred yards. So you say, could you actually, at the moment, the health of that river is being determined by a governance group, you guys, half of whom are elected by the city. Could the governance really be handed to a group which gets no members from the city? And we think that would be very, very high risk for the city in the longer term. It might not be initially, but in the longer term. So we looked at whether you could actually split off the Areti River catchment. It's about 12% of Southland, so it's not a big area, but it divides Southland in two. And as soon as you take that away, then you lose the population of Winton and Wallistown and those. The other entity is just too small, population-wise. So for us, two does not work. I mean, if we found a way of taking the Areti catchment, then it would be almost a hardly match to us, right? I mean, in terms of the difference between that and a one model would hardly matter to the city. But it would divide Southland in a way that was just, when you look at it, is just dumb. When you look at it in the map. And when you think about the fact then you'd be left with maybe 35 to 40,000 people trying to be a unitary council, when the government have already said that the minimum they would consider for a unitary council is 100,000. So it just does not work. So I forget your original question, but anyway, I meandered away there.
A little bit on a limb in relation to it, that's coming from a chief executive's perspective, and it's talking about what works currently and what doesn't work, and it gives you a reflection in relation to services and how you can provide services going forward. My clear advice is if you've got a region and you've got a service being provided that's a cross-regional service, it needs to sit with one person controlling that particular service. That doesn't mean they're not a servant to other areas and providing a service on behalf of others, but as soon as you get an issue where you've got multiple people trying to provide that from the chief executive's perspective, that's where we've had issues in the past in Southlands, where we've had, I've seen issues right across the country in relation to that. But where you have one that's very much acknowledging that they're providing a service on behalf of the region and they're providing it to other providers, then that's where it becomes a successful outcome. So when you start to think about services like, and like the Harbour Master example, it really is, it's one role that works right across the whole spectrum. When you start thinking about that, it makes common sense that that's reporting into one channel, and therefore that's from perspective of a shared service, then they're providing that to others. That can operate quite effectively as it does today with some examples within one council environment. It doesn't need to be split in relation to that component. The challenge does come when you, here's a point in relation to the Areti and a catchment area. When you've got competing requirements over catchment and your two unitaries, that causes a major issue because you have competing outcomes in relation to the service of it. If you're a TE looking after those competing requirements with one resource sitting there, that's a real challenge because which hat do you put on in relation to it as a CE? So that's one of the key highlights from a city perspective, why if it was a 2, the unitary would need to be looking at the arete from a council perspective for one of those councils.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, is how do you manage the coastal? And, you know, we're all probably betting a little bit on the development of aquaculture. And, you know, so that's a fundamental resource that we want to leverage for the good of all of our communities, right? So the management of that becomes very problematic if you go right up the coast. The waves won't sort of split themselves. And so, yeah, it just becomes challenging. And the concern or risk is that, you know, that doesn't probably matter at a level for people until it really matters. And sort of near to Tom's point, you know, it may not matter early on, but eventually it will matter significantly. And I think to Kevin's point, that's why this leadership challenge is really, really important, because, you know, we're the ones that are tasked with thinking about that intergenerational piece.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies for my lateness. I had the future generations in my control for the day, so I didn't want to abandon them. I'm heartened to hear you talk, Mayor Campbell, about partnership going forward, because this, as I think you said earlier, this is a whole new beast that would be designed. It's not a matter of anybody taking over anybody else. So really heartened to hear about that. My question though is, if you are able, I'm interested in whether there were any concerns raised by the city councillors that were kind of unique to either the TA space and a city space that we may or may not have considered in our thoughts, because if you'll pardon the reference, we are not wedded, most of us, to each other. You know, there are forms and functions that are quite different, and so I'm just wondering if there's anything that you should make us aware of that we haven't considered that came out of your discussions last week that was kind of unique.
Can I think of anything to say to you in that little bit? The hard decision for the city councillors was not about whether One Southland was the right model. Absolutely unanimous on that, and absolutely solid. The harder decision was whether to stick with the local government commission or whether to put in the Head Start. And there was that was not unanimous, it was a split. I mean, it was overwhelmingly in favour of Head Start, but there was a split. And it's the argument, debate about, you know, democratic rules, basically. Fundamentally, if we go Head Start, there's a poll or is there a referendum? So basically, we and ministers are deciding on behalf of the community. If you go the local government commission route, then at the end of that, there's a referendum. For me, and I think that's a very valid debate, right? We can debate that for hours. So that was the thing that split the council, although it was overwhelmingly in favour of going to Head Start. But what I land with that is that the process, local government commission process, they will decide on an option having gone through consultation, right? And that option will then go to referendum. It might be stood up or it might be stood down. Within a very short period of that, we're going to have the government's backstop, and the government can come right over the top of that. If the design which has come out, you know, even if it's supported, if the design has come out does not match their cookie cut design, because they'll maybe a cookie cut design, if it did not match that, it'll get swept away, right? If it has been voted down, there's nothing, then they will simply decide for us. So in my mind, there is definitely an issue around that lack of referendum. That seems in the face of undemocratic. But if you follow the process through, you find that at the end, there's government that are going to make a decision if we don't. And that's, you know, I guess we get to elect them, so it's not undemocratic, but it's not quite what we, you know, not quite the ideal.
Thanks. Dave.
Jeremy, nice to have you here.
Hang on, Dave, do you want, Michael, sorry. Do you
I
want
just
to
wanted
answer
to
this?
expand on what Nick Campbell highlighted there in relation to there's a nuance with the territorial authorities in relation to the legislation, and that came through with some of the councillors, which was the component that under the Local Government Act, the TAs need to focus at the moment on their boundaries. And from a legislative point of view, you would argue that that means that for a city to actually look at a proposal in relation to that is contra to the focus in relation to that piece of legislation. However, the aspect in relation to that we advised the council in that session was this is actually at the moment not a legislative process, so you're not going against legislation in relation to the Head Start process. And once it does become legislation, then you're actually in a new legislation component, so it takes that out of the equation. It is a delicate act to work through, but when you actually just step away and look at it from the perspective of TAs, they're supposed to focus in on their own boundaries under the Local Government Act and what's best for their own communities. And that's probably that last point is where we circled back around and said, but from our focus on the community and looking at just the Invercargill community, do we still think it's the right position, right thing and right outcome in relation to the TA boundaries as it currently is? And that circles back to say, well, it's right for them, it's right for Southland, so therefore it combined, it is the right outcome. So that was the nuance in relation to the legislation component.
Sorry, David.
Oh well. Yeah, no, it's nice to have you here today, Tom and Grant and Michael. It helps when we're trying to work through this. I guess my thing was I'm a new councillor. I stood for change. I want better efficiency. I think the system we got is broken, and we owe it to ourselves to come up with something that is better for our ratepayers. In saying that, we have a broken jigsaw, so we don't have all the pieces here. There's a whole lot of stuff that we're going to have to work our way through as it happens. And real leadership is about making those decisions at the right time, not waiting until you've got all the pieces. Because so I think it's a bit of it's not an ideal situation, but for our ratepayers, it's pretty simple. And the two little bits is about having some local voice and also having a good mix of councillors from urban and rural, because that is the big fear out there, and working through it for Southland, because I think we're a unique province that can get together and do this. We haven't got anybody to the west or south, so it's not as hard as it is in other New Zealand. But I guess the thing that it's not even really a question, you already mentioned, is that prepared to work with us on some of these issues to go forward, because there will be things come out of left field that we don't see today, and it could be massive issues that we haven't even thought about. But I took it that where you're coming to us today is often.
Just one comment on that. Somehow or other, in the last 170 years, we found ourselves volcanising, right? So we divided up into bits. But it's interesting, actually. If you go back to the legislation, which I think was 1856, that set up the provinces in New Zealand, and you actually read how it describes the function of the provincial government as opposed to the town councils, and there were only a few hundred people, right? Little town councils at that time. It's almost exactly the same as what's being proposed now. And to the extent that when I read it, I was pretty sure Grant had read it and just copied it into the, I mean, it's very, very similar. So the province was set up originally pretty much the model that we were talking about. Somehow or other, through the generations, it managed to get balkanized into, bits and pieces. And I don't think that's been the best outcome for for Southland. I think Southland had continued on the track it started on, back then, it would have been a better outcome for us now.
Thank you. I was going to ask Paul, but Paul's had to run away. But Evelyn, just before I make my comments, just making sure. Are we able to hear you, Evelyn?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hey, okay. Kia ora, e te kai whakahaere, kau te katoa I noho mai nei I raro I te tuanui o tō tātou whare. You've heard what Sam brought on behalf of Tauranga. So I'll just really reiterate that the takiwa approach. Now, if you don't understand what that means, it's from the two eastern and western boundaries, which is sort of like a V shape at the top of the South Island, but does not include Marlborough and Nelson. But all the way south down to Rakiura and points further south, including a 200-mile economic zone. We would really encourage you to look at that because it's a catchment-based, rivers not being separated, managed from the mountains to the sea, ki uta ki tai, all the things that we've talked about over many years. Sam and Emma are leading that on behalf of Tauranga. We at Te Ao Marama are helping to support, and me personally as the chair have promised to turn up where I can. So sorry about the technology earlier. I really just want to encourage us to be continuing in dialogue because this is only the beginning of the race, not the end. And I haven't got good news to share with you about a decision because that's not where it is. It actually will be led by Tauranga and the chairs. And I am given to understand that there is going to be a formal announcement by Justin possibly next Tuesday. But I'm not a chair, so I don't know that. I just heard a whisper. I do think that there's been some important things said today. Obviously, my two favourites, the coastal marine environment and the harbour masters, because I am very worried about that. But also, we're really interested in making sure that nobody takes all the water out of any of the rivers, including the Ōreti at the very top, which leaves nothing left to do the work that needs to be done all the way down through the catchments. So a whole of catchment management. And as I have said to you before, the boundary that west to east boundary, which is the Matau, the Clutha, and staying on obviously this side of it, unless you have a burning desire to manage, all of you, to manage the Clutha, I wouldn't be putting my hand up. But giving some local sense to that. I think it might have been Jeremy and somebody else talked about places like the Pomahaka or those sorts of things where they naturally gravitate to Gore as their centre for service, albeit that they're in Western Otago. So all those conversations bigger than this table, but all the things. So Sam is available if you need to contact him. I think Mr. Day, that might have been transmitted to Trudy by our staff this morning. Apart from that, I'm just here. If anybody's got any burning questions to ask of me, hopefully not, but happy to try.
Thank you, Evan. And I appreciate we had a very good session with Mariah on what day it was? Last Tuesday, and that was really, really informative and been able to have a good discussion that day. So, to your team, so appreciate that. Is there any questions? Just everyone's not keen for many, but no, but thanks for that. Just if there's no question, I was just going to give you a rundown. Obviously, I've been reasonably involved in all the local meetings, and I'm just sitting here, thinking about leadership and things around this table. One thing, and obviously the rural-urban divide is a topic that's sort of being driven a bit at the the moment, and I don't think it's there to be. If you're embedded in this community, as some of us have been here for many generations, work in business, and that the connection between this simple city and the rest is everything to the rural community. And I've had a couple of comments and situations, and one was I was arguing with a farmer he's been reasonably proactive, not supporting councils, I'd have to say, that saying he didn't want to pay for the museum, didn't want to pay for the rugby stadium, and I had to think about it for the night. But actually, when I really came down to it, it's not about necessarily that business. It's about all the layers of people that support that primary producer to get that product to the market. And it's not necessarily, it might be 10, 20 layers down, but it might be that family that might want to take the kids to the museum and take the kids to the rugby, and they've come to live in Southland because they can do that. And that's the big thing that we as business owners, rural farming, need to understand. There's so many thousands of people that support our industry, and we need good people and reliable, and we want people living in Southland to make sure we can have a successful business. And so it's sometimes you need to think further afield, outside your farm gate, outside your town, because it's all those people in the community. And that's fundamental to living in Southland. That's and probably to the principles why I'm here. The other comment was, and it was at one of the meetings, the same Feds meeting in Gore, and Feds have a more or less a two unitary provincial councils, provincial unitaries, and leave the cities to their own. But they're one of the representatives said, "Oh, you're different down here. This is different in Southland." And they were promoting theirs, but on the other hand, they were saying that Southland is different. And his comments that, when you go outside the border, you hunt as a pack, and it's quite that you are very connected and very proud to be from Southland when you're representing Southland in whatever form is outside the border. So these are actually really interesting comments, even though they might be promoting something, they're actually agreeing that there is maybe the one Southland is quite would work down here. So, but in all this talk, I always say that there's a lot of the community are relying on us around the council table to make a decision. You get we know the surveys is not. I'm not saying the surveys aren't good, but when you look at the population of how many are there, and there's a big part of the population out there that aren't having a real say. And some of those, in my discussions I have, often they're saying, well, you guys know what's going to be best. You've got all the data, you've got as much information as anyone. And that's where I encourage other councils and encourage us that sometimes we've got to make a decision, because that's what they need. They might argue about it, but at least we're making a decision. And I suppose that's where I come from, my position around this discussion. So it's not going to be easy when nobody agrees to this process being the best process, but it is what it is. This is the central government doing their thing. I'd rather personally control our destiny a bit and leave it up to someone further down the line. And this discussion's been going on for decades too. This is no new discussion about bringing Southland together too. So a lot of people have worked on this a lot, many years. And but look, at the end of the day, there's been really good discussions, and everybody's had a good fair say, but we'll work through these recommendations if that's all right in regards to that. You're all happy with that? Hey?
Do them all at once.
Morris. Well, you can move them. I'd be best to work through them, just to give everybody a point of if there's any difference of opinion or voting, and we're happy to note if there is difference. I want to make sure everybody has their fair say. We'll just go through it. Obviously, I just need a mover and second to receive the report. I'll just do that. If Phil and Jeff all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. To note that it's previously endorsed a set of regional functions to guide Environment Southland input in local government reform discussions.
I'll move there.
Yeah, you move that. Morris, second it. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. 3, to confirm, I don't know whether I need to go through all those, but these are the following principles that we have publicly stated, and I think they're all pretty, we're pretty set that they are. If anybody's got any questions, but I'll put up Mindle.
Sorry, just give me
Yep,
2 seconds. I need to find the right place.
All right.
Yes, and number, sorry, oh, trying to make it bigger, made it too big. The number 7, so VII.
Yep.
I just wanted to check with our treaty partners that those references also included the Ngaitahu Settlement Agreement or the Ngaitahu Settlement Act, or did it need to be explicitly listed as one of the things? Evelyn?
It's interesting. I think it probably would be pertinent if you're looking at Takiwā, because then you would make reference to the Ngaitahu Act 1996 and then the Ngaitahu Claims Settlement Act 1998 and to Te Reti as the 3 documents. And I think in the, I could be wrong about this, but I think in the PowerPoint that Sam used, he had those 3 acts there. So including them in the wording wouldn't be a wrong thing as such. I think it's really down to you guys as to how much wording you want to put into that particular thing. The charter, of course, is problematic because it's an agreement, not a legally binding document, the way that the mana whakahono ārohi would have been. So, but it is a start to show, I'm assuming that this is what ICC would prefer, to show that you have made all these considerations when you have been designing your proposal, to be able to show central government that you have actually considered how this will work going forward. But again, I don't have, I'm really happy if you do it. Probably really happy if ICC reiterate it. It may come out more firmly in something that Justin Tepper actually announces as well. So, but signing up voluntarily is always a good thing.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Stephen. Hey, thanks, Evelyn. That made a lot of sense to me. So obviously these are the principles that Environment Southland are adopting in terms of how we would assess any proposal around local government reform and reorganisation, including any Head Start and ICC proposal. So I would suggest that based on Evelyn's comments, that we probably just, for specificity's sake, just add those on, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You, Chair. We have suggested in our meetings with the Ranaka and Ngaitahu front that we would draft that section in conjunction with them. So just as, you know, those parts of the sort of environment stuff, we've asked your staff to support us in writing those. You know, we will ask the Ranaka to support us in writing, I already have asked, to support us in writing that section to make sure we get forms of words around things like the Charter of Understanding, treaty settlement, so forth, that they and we are comfortable with. Because otherwise we'll probably get it wrong a little bit. So much better to draft it together.
So pretty happy to add those if we can.
Yep.
Those 2 acts. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, I'll move that, Mr. Chairman.
So, well, we'll go through this just so that, so in regards, are you happy with that? You're happy to move 3?
3.
So second it, Phil. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. 4, note the principles are intended to guide the Environment Southland engage with both Head Start and the Local Government Commission reorganisation investigation, including council's written feedback to the Commission by 28th of August. So this is not just one, it's actually doing two jobs at one. So happy to move that.
Yep.
Lyndall, second David, second it. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Number 5, agree in principle that based on the information currently available, a single Southland New Wild Unitary Authority appears more consistent with Environment Southland's regional function principles than a 2 unitary model, particularly in relation to catchment integrity, integrated planning, capability and continuity, regional cohesion. I've got to learn to read, don't I? To speak, actually. Big words. Yeah, second. I've got you on to Jeff, second. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
English wasn't. Okay, 6, to provide written support to Invercargill City Council for the development and submission of a 1 Southland-wide unitary authority head start proposal, subject to the proposal clearly demonstrating how it will, we've obviously got things there, I'll just quickly go through: protecting integrated catchment management, regional environment stewardship. B, maintain and strengthen local voice through meaningful local board or equivalent arrangements. Uphold the treaty obligations, existing charter arrangements, enduring partnership with Ngāi Tahu ki Marahiku. Whether we need to put in the X there. Does that cover it?
Good for consistency.
For consistency in regards, would that be right? Okay, I'll move to do that. And preserve and strengthen specialist regional capability, science data monitoring, regulatory emergency resilience functions. E, provide clear accountability for decision-making, funding, regulatory independence and service delivery. And F, identify matters that require further detailed design if the outline proposal is accepted by the government. So going to move it for that. Jeff? So Roger, you have a second. Is there any discussion around that? Phil?
Thank you. I think this is the crux of this one, and I guess my overarching concern is that by endorsing a proposal with the Head Start pathway, that it could trigger a very much a divided Southland, where we've got a city seen to support a single unitary, and we've got a rural Southland seen to largely support a 2 unitary model. And so the concern that I carry as we engage in this decision is that this could trigger a strong sense of resentment amongst many stakeholders in the rural community. And that resentment could subsequently make it more challenging to implement an amalgamation solution moving forward. I would also note that, I think it may be mentioned earlier, that by doing this, we could also trigger a second non-conforming proposal being submitted to government by the 9th of August as well, which would put us in an interesting situation of 2 non-conforming proposals, probably one with the ES endorsement, perhaps one maybe not with the ES endorsement, but potentially with 2 rural TAs supporting it. And so I'm just expressing this reservation that if we go down this pathway, we could actually be making the challenge of local government amalgamation or reorganisation for Southland more challenging into the future by taking this early decision. And so it's driven by the lack of democratic legitimacy that's inherent in what the government has asked of us through the Head Start pathway, and the information asymmetry associated with the lack of information on what is a backstop involved. I'm kind of pressing this concern. I am torn because I know that I'm an Invercargill city ratepayer. I know that there are more people within the Invercargill city catchment. So if you're weighing it on what's the best outcome for the most number of people, you might say, well, it's in the interest of Invercargill to do it this way, just push on, because more people will be affected. I just wanted to express that concern in this case. To me, there is risk that will need to be managed if this proposal was accepted and implementation goes ahead with a distinct set of different perspectives from our rural constituents.
Thanks. Yep, Jeff.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, just thinking back to when was it, about a week ago, we had Simon Upton online, Minister for the Environment. No, Commissioner for the Environment, sorry. And look, he did touch on one aspect there that perhaps is a little bit counter to this sentence here of D, whereby he was suggesting that possibly in central government they could have those very specialised services there for science and start and a few other functions like that that all of the unitary authorities in future could tap into, so that they had a really specialised core there. So I just wonder whether we do want to have that sentence strengthened to that extent there.
Can I just quickly respond? All that is saying is that any Head Start proposal, the ICC Head Start proposal, would need to explain how those services would be delivered. It wouldn't necessarily say that they would be delivered through the unitary. They could talk about being delivered by takiwā-wide services or some other arrangement. Yeah, and that would potentially cover off that point. Thank you.
I'll just after Phil's comment, and Phil and I have talked about this a number of times. I don't think, my personal point of view is that we need to get out there and put a position in, and I don't think the rural urban or the rural suggestion, I believe that may bring actually people into the room, and that's my feeling, when understanding where I live, and I think people are really looking for guidance in this personally, and even the ones that might argue about it are still probably pleased at least there's a direction. And I don't think the sooner there's a direction on the table, as I've said, get them in the room, they'll get maybe everybody will be happy, but at least get on with this a wee bit, because often things drag on and on and on, and we'll get nowhere, and then someone else will come along and just tell you what you're going to get. So that's my own personal point of view, and that's probably all I can say. I said I want to lead in this discussion. So anyway, is there any other in regards to that, Lyndall?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm similarly a little bit discombobulated as Councillor Morrison is. But I guess I just want to check that should one of the other TAs include us in our conversation, a similar document with almost identical wording would also be considered in that space as well. Is that what people are thinking, or are we only having this conversation and this kind of support for this Head Start proposal?
We have, again, Phil and I, how do we talk around in regards to exactly the same thing? So these are principles of environment. We're here for the regional council. These are the priorities, and to be honest, that could be used
by anybody
for any Head Start, any proposals, and nothing can stop that. This is probably there's that, but then we'll probably bring in as all the other councils are going, where do you feel we're best? Do we feel the one unitary, which we've just agreed that one unitary would work? Then this next step, do we want to really reiterate? But you are right, yes.
Yeah, so
it's not exclusive, it's actually regional, putting their priority.
To make that clear, and remind us all that they are guiding principles really.
Just briefly through the chair, hopefully number 4 that you agreed to before does cover that point off. Yeah, that was the intention of it.
Yeah, so we're putting that out to the local government question anyway. There's nothing changed in that regards. So, John.
Yeah, look, thanks, Chair. Look, the reality is we've got a proposal. Fully appreciate Phil's point, and it's something I've been thinking of much to my question earlier. But the reality is, if someone like ICC brings a proposal that illustrates how a regional council's function can continue to do what's best for the environment and the community, then that's where we have to go. That is a reality. We don't have much of a choice, and this is where we're at. So it's been a leap of faith. Okay.
Right, I'm happy to move number 7. Regards to that, we got 6 that we agreed. Agreed to provide written support for Invercargill City, and I won't read through everything else. You're happy to second that, David? No further discussion. I'll put it. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. We go to number 7. We note that this support is for the Head Start outline proposal does not predetermine council's position on all detailed design matters, including representation, arrangements, board boundaries, local boards, Māori representation, rating, harmonisation, asset and debt treatment, or transition arrangements, final form of any local government commission reorganisation approach. I'll mover and seconder for that. Cool. David, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Sorry, if you're looking online too, sorry about that. You had your hands up, hopefully. 8, authorise the Chair and Chief Executive to finalise and send a letter to the Invercargill City Council confirming council position consistent with these resolutions. I'll leave that. Jeff? Ewan, second it. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. 9, request that any final Head Start proposal for Southland explicitly include Environment Southland's regional function principles and describe how the proposal gives effect to them. Who wants to do that? Roger, John, second it. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Carried. And 10, request that staff prepare Environment Southland's draft written feedback to the local government commission and on 2 options, using the principles confirmed in this report as the assessment framework. I'm happy to move that. Roger, you'll second that. All in favour? Aye. Very good. Thank you very much for that. Stephen, yes.
Can I just briefly mention, so Michael has already reached out to me asking for our involvement and input into the development of their Head Start proposal. So, and we've said yes. So we'll be working very closely like this to ensure that these principles are captured in the proposal. So yeah, we look forward to working on that in very short order.
No, thank you for that.
Can I ask that risk of a divided Southland is explicitly attended to within that proposal? Because I think it has to be acknowledged and it has to be considered by government as they consider whether to accept this proposal, and we need to indicate the measures that we think might be appropriate to mitigate that risk. I think that needs to be explicitly included in the proposal, given that that could derail the process moving forward.
We'll be covering that off. We'll be covering that off within the proposal, but I also wanted to highlight, and I heard it through some of the discussion here before in relation to local boards. There seems to be a misrepresentation that local boards would be evenly split. That's not the position. The local boards would likely to be more weighted towards the rural. I just want to highlight that. Would give some more comfort, I think, to the voice in relation to the rural having a more local voice, acknowledging it's harder to get to certain locations, and then for the local voice it's closer, having those boards closer to the rural areas. And that's one of the ways we'll be trying to address it within the proposal to explain that. And that comes through from the Germany has been.
I would just comment, if you don't mind, Chair, that I mean, overwhelmingly the message that I'm getting from people now, I mean, I think I've told this story before. So the first time I put out one Southland post, I got 111,000 views, right? It's quite a lot from a province of 111,000 views, right? Like hundreds of points. The second time I put one out, I get 20 odd. So I put one out last week, which really just captured what we discussed, what was agreed at ICC last week. and I get 4,000 views. And that's the smallest number of views I've had in any post for months. Now, what people are saying to me, and what I think that reflects is that people just want to be led in this now. They don't want us to be faffing around. They would rather, I don't just mean they want to be told what to do. There's an awful lot to happen as we work through it. But they would rather us provide leadership, you know, rather than kind of dancing around each other for the next 2 years. So that's the message I take from the fact that, you know, and overwhelmingly the comments I hear as I bump into people on the street is, look, that's your business. I don't understand what a unitary council is. You have no idea the difference between a local board and a community board. You know, that's what you do, you know. So that's the message that I'm taking at the moment.
No, thanks. John, do you have something? No, nobody? No, that's good. The only comment is probably I know the councils work together, but the sooner we get a draft, that maybe other councils that are taking a wee bit more time, you know, to give them a bit of an understanding and get information. I don't know how we can do that if we, but time is of the essence, obviously. I know we want to get this right. You've got to get it right. You start proposal, but
I'm invited to go and talk to the Gore Council next week.
Okay.
So they have their meeting, I think, on the 4th, if I remember correctly. And both Mayor Scott and I have got a 10-minute slot to, you know,
I might have to say too.
present the position. So they've all here first hand.
I'm deciding whether to go there as a ratepayer or as chair of environment myself. So someone said you can go as both. But anyway, look, appreciate that. And I'll close anyways. Just a thank for everyone for participation. Everybody online, Evelyn and Alistair, and you're a good forward on. I just want to make a comment that future local government structures matter, but only because of what they enable. And the real test is whether reform improves outcomes for Southland communities and the environment. So I'll just close with a closing karakia. Kia tau, ia tātou katoa, te arawhai o tō tātou riki a ihu karaiti. Me te araha o te atua, me te whiwhine na rahi tanga. Ki te wāurua tapu, aki, amene. Thank you, everyone. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Maria.
Long day for you fellas too.
Oh, this is an early knock for us, no?
My dinner's on.
You're going to watch some Dragon's Den before the 4th, are you, just to get some pointers? Or